Great. Well, welcome everybody. It's really a pleasure to have everybody here today. My name is Nadine. I'm a visual anthropologist and a member of Fair Pictures marketing and sales team. And I'll be moderating our discussion today. We're really thrilled that so many of you have expressed an interest in our 9th FairTalk on authenticity in times of AI. But before we get started today, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on today, and where Fair Pictures business is conducted in Australia. We honour their continuing connection to land, water, community, and the social justice movement, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Just a few points for housekeeping. So firstly, for those that aren't able to attend today, we will be recording the session. And if you don't feel comfortable with this, but you'd still like to participate, please just keep your camera off and ask any questions that you might have via the chat box. And for everyone else, we'll be sending a copy of the recording to the email address that you used to sign up with. So in this FairTalk, our diverse expert panelists will discuss and share their collective experiences looking at critical questions and issues regarding the use of AI in our industry. And given the breadth of the subject of AI, we'll focus on authenticity and trust surrounding visual communication. And we aim to explore questions such as when is a photo authentic? How do generative AI tools change our perception of reality? And how can we ensure authenticity in the era of AI? We'll aim to consider both possibilities as well as limitations of providing an authentic image in today's changing world. So following the panel discussion, we'll open up the floor to a Q&A and general group discussion before wrapping up. And we really welcome everybody's thoughts and inputs to that for us to get a range of varying opinions. It's really important to us and to the success of our Fair Talks. So I'd like to warmly welcome panelists and thank them for taking the time to join and share with us all today. And I'll hand over to the panelists to introduce yourselves and share some information on why you find this topic important and relevant in your area of work. Thanks. Do you want to start, Oral?
Yes, I can do this. So I'm Oral or Aurel in German. I'm co-founder of Fair Picture. Really happy to be the Fair Picture voice today. And the reason why I think this is relevant and why we are also doing this panel is that we are deeply convinced that images are very powerful still, and that they still have a great credibility, even if very often it's not in our mind and more intuitive. And the developments of AI, of generative AI especially, so constructing photos and videos through AI, we face a great challenge in this because it's becoming easier and easier to generate photos in a way that they look authentic or that they formerly were produced in feel and showed a certain reality. And I hand over to Natalie. Natalie,
You there?
Yeah, good. Can you all hear me well? Yeah, nice. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie from Numbers Protocol, saying hello from Taiwan. Numbers focus on ensuring provenance for all types of creativity created by both humans and AI. At Numbers team, I play as a role as a global outreach. In my role, I spend a lot of time talking to people, advocating the importance of provenance and engaging with the partners and creators around the world. To me, it is like really the critical time right now for the industry and all the creators to understand how they can prepare themselves for the next 5 to 10 years, because AI is here to stay and evolve. And we hope that Numbers could be the trustworthy partners to support both the brands and creators along the way. I really look forward to the conversation today and all the feedbacks and questions that are coming from you all. Yeah, thank you. And now I hand over to Maurice.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Moritz, partner at Feinheit. We're a communications agency based in Zurich. And we are working at the intersection of communication and digitalization for political, social, and ecological topics. And we're really on a point of our trust, or the trust in images is on the ballot right now. Just a very actual, tragic happening, the attack of this hospital in Gaza. And if you follow Reddit and Twitter, not everybody is sure what of these images we saw is true and what not, just as an example, which is very actual. As an agency, we experience directly how communication meets the recipients, and we find with great power comes great responsibility. And these tools definitely give great power to everyone in this world, no matter if the person has a noble intention or not. And as an agency, our track record on AI and especially on the technique of machine learning goes back a few years. Especially due to our technological, political, and social interests at our work. So I'm looking forward to the discussion of this topic, which is moving very, very fast and very, very dynamic, and are, looking forward to the questions.
Amini.
Yes, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. My name is Amini Swedi. I'm a freelance photographer and videographer, filmmaker. And I also work together with Fair Picture as a visual creator. In terms of what interests me in this conversation, the main question as an artist will be how this new technology is disrupting, and not necessarily in a negative way, disruption in the general sense, changing, revolutionizing the art space, and how and whether artists should cope with this technology is a question that I've been asking myself for a while now. It's been a topic amongst not only visual artists, but sound artists, and other artists as well in other fields. And so this panel, I think, would not necessarily answer all the questions, but answer some and asks other questions that will help us continue this conversation in the long run. Thank you so
much. Thanks so much. In regards to the panel discussion, who would like to go first? Does somebody have a specific question to ask another panelist, or should I pose a question? Moritz, you had mentioned that you had a couple of questions for the panelists.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, but maybe they are jumping a little bit too far. What me personally drives very much in this field, and regarding the question authenticity of images with AI. We really believe that learning by using the tools and applying and sharing the acquired knowledge is very important. It's kind of actually quite the spirit of enlightenment, but we believe in it very much, and try to lead as an example, because we as experts in our fields, but just with our view, which is very focused, we have to go to lead as an example, to understand the technology behind it, because we have the technological knowledge, and we as an agency are in direct exchange with clients first, and because and our products reach people, so we kind of at a point where we can try to influence our customers and try to steer the products, the output, which really gets to the recipients. And that's a very interesting point. We are standing as an agency at one point, and then on the other point, I said with great power, there has to come great responsibility, and then the rest's on our shoulders. And that's kind of not an easy role at our point as an agency. And maybe in the process of producing a campaign or producing communication, I don't know, but I mean, maybe you have kind of the same thoughts, because you are, I guess, working sometimes with agencies or direct with clients. Maybe you have kind of the same position in projects and the same thoughts. Maybe you can share them a little bit. So I'm very interested in that.
All right. So I think kind of taking from your conversation on the concept of authenticity, right? I think it's very important to ask the question, what is considered authentic? And I think that's a philosophical question. But I think it's important to ask the question, even though it is philosophical, right? So when I work, generally speaking, what I usually do is I would have something like a mood board, right? Whoever I'm working with, there's a concept, right? And so having gotten that concept, I would have a mood board in terms of what references do I think would fit the vision of that particular project. And this inspires the work that is to follow, right? Now, the major question is, what exactly is authentic about me, right? Because I've taken other people's work, right, as inspiration, and I'm using that to inform my work. That's one part of the equation. There's another part of the equation whereby the environment, the situation, the people I'm photographing, filming, all that, in a sense, feeds my work. Then the other question is, what is authentic to me? Because I think the word authenticity itself has something to do with being original, having something to do with myself, right? So having said that, I think this kind of pulls us back to the question whereby when we're prompting machines, right? We're saying, I need an image that looks like this. Wouldn't that be the same as being prompted by the outside world, which, you know, is all around me in terms of informing what my final image is, with whatever project that is, right? Aren't we doing the same thing? So in the sense, I think when we then add in the question of authenticity with responsibility and the ethics behind art, and including, you know, AI art, of course, that's a very interesting word to use. The question is, who is taking the responsibility, number one? Is it the image maker in terms of the one who's prompting? Is it the database that's feeding this algorithm? Is it every other artist whose work has been inputted into the information system? That's another question. But if we are going to ask that question, shouldn't we ask the same question for what inspires me as an artist all around, right? and the ethics behind it. So I think, just to kind of sum it up, what I would say is the ethics would have to do with how we acknowledge authenticity in our art. Do I acknowledge that to me and me alone, the copyright holder? Or do I acknowledge that everything around me is feeding into my art? And if that is the issue, then I think we'll have a kind of a smooth, not necessarily really smooth, but kind of a smooth transition into AI. But of course, there's other questions that are going to arise from all that situation there with ethics and all that. Because the machine is amoral. It doesn't have any ethics. It's just collecting information, and we are the ones who use information. And so just to finalize, I'll say, let's take an example of the Gaza situation, right? We don't know if the images were real or not, but we've known of people manipulating images which were not AI. A photographer going into Africa and shooting a photo which shows that the situation is really bad, but it's not that bad. Right? We can manipulate it, right? Because we're not in that environment. So that also poses another ethical question. Yeah, so I'll just leave it there, and maybe Natalie might hop into into that as well with ethics and all that coming around. Thank you.
Thanks, Amini. Natalie, do you have something to add?
I think I mean, really point out a good here is that there's always a chance that the manipulation could come from humans as well. That's the part that we cannot control. And I think the beauty of that is also that we all have an angle, right? Like what you said, that writing a prompt is also a way to express how those like writing the prompts is also a way to express how you like this image to be, like how the environment impact on how you want to shoot in these photos. So I think those are also a way to express how you take, what's the angle that you want to express through these images. So I think that's a very interesting. I think that's also a part of creativity, of what kind of prompts that you write out to create this one. I think what I would also like to, I think it also goes back to the questions that our definition of authenticities. I think we all have different, slightly different answers to that. I believe would be happy to hear like what our definition of that authentic image is to you. How about Maurice?
So for me, it's all about, is the image telling me something which I can rely on and which don't have a hidden agenda or false information? At the moment, for me personally, it really, really comes down to that. That's for me authenticity. I understand the point of view as a creator, with a view on creativity, with a view on inspiration, with a view of an own art style as a creator or as an artist. But at the point right now, as a communication agency, we feel a lot of pressure on the definition of how long can I trust images. And that's only one point of view. And we know out of our work, an image is saying more than 1,000 words and can have a lot of impact. And the difference and the tipping point of these technologies is, I know manipulating an image is very old. It goes back to the old photographers, which use pens and so on. That's nothing new. But the really difference is these tools are so cheap and so easy to use. They have optimized UI and UX to use them. So everybody can literally use these images first. And second, it don't need a lot of people. It don't need a big amount of time to produce a lot of stuff. And that's the big difference back to the manipulation via Photoshop, for example. But that's just regarding the question, what is authenticity? I think we have to fight to literally fight for the point that authenticity just is that we're not manipulated with images, and for that we have to putting aside all fears and skepticism about these technologies now, not blindly, but prudently and wisely. And for that we need to exchange ideas and back each other up to learn and use these tools. So that's kind of my point in my work in a communications agency, which we are facing the authenticity topic. Yeah, Aurel, we discussed in preparation. I think you have also a few views on that.
Yes, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the authenticity topic, maybe it's also a bit of a buzzword. I think it comes down very much to credibility. To do we believe that something is true? Do we believe that that this situation illustrated that this is really the case, or at least in a similar way that this is like it is illustrated, like it is shown? And I think with Fair Picture, why we tackle this topic now, I think is because it's becoming more and more. It's become more and more available. It's becoming cheaper. I think it was more expensive, at least in terms of taking time a year ago. Now it is becoming a lot cheaper. So I think communication professionals are more and more interested in using it. Try it out maybe, but also I think in the next couple of months or years will be forced to use this because others use it. And I think this will really, I mean, we saw this very much in the whole social network topic, that you then need to do this to compete with all the others, to have the attention. And I think from a Fair Picture perspective, it has some advantages. I would say it just completely transforms the field of ethical communication. The questions that we address in terms of what is stereotypical, for example, what is a dignified, what's dignified storytelling, what is a decolonized story, a visual story to tell, for example, how do we treat the rights, privacy topics. I think it changes all of these vital questions for us that we all summarize under this topic of ethical communication. So far, we work with like 3 key pillars: context, consent, and co-creation as a solution in a classical production process. That we say, well, if you can get consent from the person that is being photographed, if you know in what context a photo or video is taken, and if you have a creative production process that also includes the people that know the local context. So, like, I mean, a creator, but ideally also the people that are the protagonists of the photos or of the videos, the people that are in the visuals. Then I think that has been our approach. Then you come close, or you can solve a lot of these challenges because you have a diverse views, you have a local view, you have a better understanding of the local context and so on. And with this AI generated content, it just changes all of this. And it's been super fascinating to observe also in the industry, or especially in this ethical communication niche, how some have jumped on it as a huge opportunity, in a way of finally we don't have the problem of dignity anymore because those are not real people, for example, has been an argument. Or finally we can show a demonstration if there is, I don't know, demonstration or something in a critical context, we can just generate it and use it as a symbol image, something like this. And we don't have the problem of consent anymore because there's no one to give consent to. And I can see the potential there, that you just navigate around the problems. But if you truly solve problems, I think this is a different question. This, I think, is challenging. I think there are pros and cons, but what you definitely do not solve is the whole topic of dignity stereotypes, because it's I mean, on multiple levels. because the data sets are biased. But even if you have perfect data sets and if you had perfect algorithms, I think even then it's the prompter who, with his or her background, defines defines how they prompt, how it's generated, or at least partially defines it. And with this, I think this reproduction of stereotypes are, I think there's a great danger. And what we find really fascinating or important is to think about, and I think it comes a bit with what Amini also said, like who's doing the prompting, like how can we apply these pillars that I mentioned before, consent, context, co-creation, for example, to a prompted generated photo, to an AI generated photo. So of course, first ask, when is, in the way we work, when is AI generated content even applicable in the first place? So when does it make sense? And when do we explicitly say, as an organization, as a communication person, I don't want to do this in this case? How do I illustrate this? How do I show that it's another picture, or like a classically produced picture? But I think also since we will have these moments of, I think it's just we will all an AI generators to use to create photos. I think there is really the question: how do we bring in these discussions? Like, is there a co-creative approach, for example? Also in this, how do we have these? Before you used consent as a way to ensure that someone is happy with that, with being photographed. But then I think it's with AI, it's more the question of is a group or is a certain kind of situation, people that are represented, are they happy with the prompted image? I think this question is really, really interesting, really important, but also extremely difficult to solve, because you don't have the person in the photo that you can ask anymore. And then it's the question, well, who do you ask, and how do you solve this problem? So I think those are super fascinating and really important topics, especially, and I think this is, for example, I'll stop in a minute, but what we see at the moment is that the camera industry is, and I think Natalie can tell you all about this afterwards, is employing technical solutions to show that a photo is authentic, or is like captured by the camera and not created. But this is always the production approach. But the what happens when people view an image, or what happens on the side of the recipient, I think this is will be extremely hard to solve technically, I think.
That's fascinating. Moritz, your hand is up.
Yeah, just because you mentioned Oral, knowing which prompt leads to that specific image. Just for all you people, if you don't know, Midjourney is an open book until you don't have a pro account. So if you visit the Midjourney website, you can navigate through thousands of images, and you can read the prompts behind the images. And that's very, very interesting, because you see the target, you can read, you can learn about the target a person had to get an image. And I did this a few months ago, because in Germany there was a big discussion coming up about the data sets, because the AfD, the right-wing party in Germany, used generated images of refugees. And then the discussion comes up, oh, the database is biased, refugees are always men, and refugees are always angry and fighting. And that's completely false in that case of that image, because the guy who prompted, wanted to get such an image. And until you don't know the prompt behind the image, you can't divide the discussion. Is the data set biased, or is the problem in the database, or is the user the tipping point which wanted to get such an image? And in that case, it was very, very, a little bit bad, because that's an official in Germany which did that. And I scrolled through this Midjourney profile, and I get goosebumps just by reading the prompts and seeing kind of what images he wants to get. I just share the link afterwards. And that might be a question to you, Natalie. At this point, I get to this a few months ago. I thought, wow, it would be game changing if we can know the prompts behind every generated image, because that help us to learn how the image gets to this point until it's published. What are the thoughts behind it? What is the goal with this image? And that's maybe kind of also a point in numbers protocol which you follow or which you're working on.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that information as well. I think, well, to go back to that questions that I raised about the authenticity, the definition of authenticity, I think for people like me working in the tech company, my definition is, I don't know, my definition is more like an authentic image is something that I can verify the source, who create the images, where, when, and how it is created, and even to be able to trace where it's used. So I think it's a little slightly different compared to Ariel or the other photographers. I think as we all human beings, we all have different ways to interpret the same objects, the same events. But I think it's also the beauty of the creativity, because we all look at differently, so we can create something very different, very beautiful. And well, I think a photographer can take in photos for the same objects, but with different angles. The final two pictures will tell the two very different stories, and it all depends on what message that this photographer intends to send out. I think this can be easily seen from those COVID photos that taken or shared on the social medias. Like we can see a queue of people line up in the supermarkets during the COVID time, but as the other photos also tell us that in the queue, there's actually people keeping a very good distance in between each others. So I think by just the same locations, the same photographers, but different angles already tell us different stories. So I think from a technology perspective, what we could do is to help both the creators and the viewers to build the trust by making this image traceable and verifiable. Because the parts that the creators make, that's something we cannot interfere, let's say, and that's also fully under them who as a creators. And and for me also, then an AI generated images can also be authentic when we know who is the one who writing the prompt and what are those prompts they use as well. And most AI generated content now still involve human touches, because without the one who writing those prompts, how they're gonna be created those things, right? Because we can see very creative artists writing like prompts, creating very interesting pieces as well. So I personally believe that the trust is not only needed for AI content, but maybe even more important for human creations. Because when we can truly prove the content, and then it tells a true story, and that's also how we as human creators can differentiate ourselves from AI. And I think some of you might already know about solutions like the watermark, timestamp, or even the C2PA that help most of the creators protect their contents. I think creators really have a very difficult time because during the social media, the internet populations, is that you are struggling to get your contents out there to be seen, but at the same time, you also struggle to getting afraid that people will steal your content. So I really think that they really have a very difficult time. Besides, they also need to spend time creating content and also try to improve their skills as well. So and numbers, what we do is that we utilize blockchain technologies to create an immutable records to ensure the provenance data stays with the content together. So on top of metadata, we also encourage users to mark the AI models that being used or the prompt being returned for that content. And well, if any, but also that any of the metadata that can create these records can help the creators to prove themselves, for these content creations. And by moving further, so we also work with the AI, our AI partners to create the AI generated pipeline that can automatically record the prompt that's being used, and the final image is being generated, and all the metadata created in between. So we hope this can also demonstrate how we can use AI tool more trustworthy, and the creators can feel more, let's say, more comfortable and more confident of using it, because it is just, if we can see it just as a tool only to generate content, is similar like using a camera. I wouldn't say similar, but I mean, if we see an AI tool as a tool, I think camera is also a tool we use, right, to generate content. And to me, well, I'm personally more concerned about the training data being used behind the AI tools, like Aurelio mentions. But I think that's a lot of discussion can be done within that later, or a separate chat as well. Yeah. I wonder how many would have any like comments on.
Yeah, thank you much, Natalie. Amini, would you like to speak just before we open up the floor for open discussion?
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, I've been smiling all along your contribution here, Natalie, because there's a lot of questions, and I think when we talk about responsibility, we also have to talk about accountability, right? Now, through, for example, the fair picture process, there's the whole concept of consenting, right? So the person who you're photographing is allowing you to tell their story. And so that also feeds into co-creation, right? And in a sense, this process is holding the creator accountable, right? Not only towards the dignity of the person he's photographing, but also in the whole pipeline of the creation of that art, right? From the shooting to the editing, all the way to where they'll be displaying the, and where and how they'll be displaying that particular product, right? But then the question is, how many people verify, say, the information? Do people ask, for example, when we read a magazine, we are assuming, right, or an online article which uses a certain photograph, that write there down copyright, or this is a photo of this lady or that man, whatever. How many people take the time to verify the consent? That's number one, right? Number two, the actual context of the story. Is it real or not, right? And this can go all the way to news. When we watch news, how many times do we actually say, is this news true? We just watch the images. We really don't know how they were shot. It could be an After Effects production, right? And so I think we have to circle back on having ways to not only awaken the awareness of the people who are consuming, say, the art, right, or the images, and particularly images we're talking about here. And I think with AI, people have started becoming aware, because they'll always ask, there's always kind of a skepticism. Is this image real, right? And the word real itself is quite interesting. What do we mean by real? Because when I take a photograph, I consider that to be prompting, because my brain is processing data. I need this particular photo in this particular environment to tell this particular story. It's just I'm going through a longer process, using a camera and lensing and lighting and this aperture and this shutter speed, whatever, to get that image. So I'm prompting the camera, I'm prompting the subject, I'm prompting the environment, right? And so when we ask, is it real? Real in what sense? So I think creating awareness, not only for creators, but people who are consuming, and that's not an easy task. Of course, it starts with a small panel like this, and then it grows out, right? So yes, if we're going to keep AI accountable, are we keeping artists and creators accountable? And are we making sure that the consumers of that particular art keep the creators accountable in terms of how they present their images, whether it is AI generated or not AI generated, with a camera, for example? I don't know. It's questions I don't have answers, but I'll give it back to you, Didi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amini, and thank you to all our panelists for sharing really interesting, fascinating points with us. We're running a few minutes over, but I'd like to now open up the floor to everybody. So if anybody has any questions for our panelists or thoughts they'd like to share with us, please jump in. There's a comment in our chat box from Frederick, which I find really fascinating because I've had this discussion with colleagues at Fair Picture about this Amnesty International campaign. I don't know, Frederick, if you'd like to speak to this rather than me speaking for you.
I can. I don't know what I have a lot to offer other than what the article, but I think one of the questions I had with it is the fact that it is photorealistic, and I'm putting quotes there because if you look at what is there, it is not. It doesn't take too much scrutiny before you know that it's not real, but it's real enough to evoke an emotional state, which makes us uncomfortable. And so that how real an image is if that had been illustrated with a pen and ink drawing, it would have, I think, had a different impact because we would have seen it as being evoked by one person's point of view. The fact that it's looking photorealistic is where it becomes difficult. And a question, I suppose, is where do we cross the line? For instance, if I have some photographs that are taken of people, but there's a very large Coca-Cola logo in the background, I have been asked in the past to remove that from the photograph because we don't want to brand, and have refused to do that because even though it was even possible prior to AI to remove something like that and make it look realistic, we're changing the scene, and so that feels like a slippery slope where we're taking something that is authentic, and so rather than do that, we simply don't use the photograph. But where do you draw the line? I have altered photos in the sense of changing the lighting, making it lighter rather than darker. Those sorts of things seem legitimate. When does it cease to be legitimate to adapt or to alter a photograph?
Yeah, it's a really important point. Oral, your hand is up first.
Sorry, I was first, Moritz. No, I just connected with what you said before, Amini, with this question, I think, or you also mentioned this, Frederick, this was possible before. And I really like the idea of maybe this is even an opportunity with this trend at the moment, or with this accelerated development, that we are becoming aware much quicker in the importance of say doctored photos, independent of how they were created. I really like this idea. I think it's a question of, maybe it's also authenticity, maybe is in this regard the wrong term. It's a question of what's the impact of the photo and who is taking responsibility of what the impact of the photo is. And I think in regards to your question, Frederick, I would say the line is, it depends on what, for example, Amnesty, what's their responsibility that they take in the impact they have with their photos. And I think in this image, or also their explanation afterwards why they did it, they said, well, we justify the means to the end. I think it's in English. So in a way that we want to raise awareness, and for this we can live with the costs that we might use a stereotypical image, or that it might look scary and or scarier than it was effectively in reality. I mean, I don't know how it looked in reality, but I think this is really the discussion. And I think this goes down to the core of what we do with Fair Pictures, that we say, for example, especially in the nonprofit sector, that we say it's not only about the money you're raising, it's about what impact do you have with your photos, in what kind of realities do you construct in the minds of your donors, for example. Is Africa a dependent, poor continent? Because that's the image that you're using and showing all the time, because you might earn most of the money. That might be a good argument to earn money, but it's a bad argument for a future of a global community or global society where we treat each other as equals, whenever I think about Africa, my first image I have in my mind is not that of poor and dependency, but that of the diversity it effectively is. And I think this is the kind of responsibility that we say not only media have to do, but also corporate or non-profit communication professionals. And I think this is probably the same topics independent of whether it's AI or not. And I completely agree with you. I mean, then it's the question of, and this might raise this, or it might become much more dominant to us, this question, because we have to solve it now. It's not, you don't have these maybe checks and balances that you might have had, because you can only prompt with a camera so far, whereas with an AI tool you can prompt a lot further. So yeah, would have been my answer. But Moritz, you probably good, interesting things to add.
Yeah, it's always inspiring to talk about these topics and to hear questions, what the thoughts of others are. So the first point, regarding the photorealistic point, in my point of view, it's insane what happened the last 12 months. And it will be insane what we are able to do, or what our capacities with these tools are in 12 months. I can't even imagine it. And so we really have to cut it off and say we will be able to build and prompt photorealistic images where you are not able to see if it is a photo shoot with a camera or not. That's our future. And a little bit further, it's also going to that way, to that point with video. I don't know what can change this path we are on. I don't have any idea what can change these directions first. So, and the second point, which is very, very interesting, is that what you mentioned, Aurel, what is the impact? And there is, with our experience, with our work, I'm a little bit scared. And sorry to be the dark guy, the pessimistic guy, but if I'm looking around first, we are, and that's very, very cool to see a lot of people here, but we are in a bubble. And if you go down to the impact, to the discussions about the impact of an image should have, and we look right and left, political topics, social topics, and we see what impact these organizations or these people want to have, then I'm a little bit scared, because then we are not talking, then we are back in this point I mentioned regarding the trust. And that's what we are always facing, these discussions we are always facing when we create a campaign. So kind of, I know this Amnesty International example. There are also a few in Switzerland around of political campaigns. And that's a very, very difficult question, because if you focus on the impact, it happens very fast that you make opportunistic decisions. Very, very fast, because you have to reduce, in the noise of this world, you have to reduce your content, you have to reduce what you want to say, and then it gets very, very difficult. And that triggered me a little, the focus on the impact for me, that is not really a solution, because if I point out, or if I imagine what others want to have, which impact others want to have, then I go back to me and do my little steps and hope this is enough to change something.
Thanks, Moritz. Cohen, your hand's up. You're muted. Can you unmute? That's it. Thank you.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right. What I wanted to say, for me, in fact, concerning AI, there's a big difference if you use it for really creative options for artistic photography, or on the other side, if you use it for more social documentary photography, where I can see the comments here, then it's true that we really can use it as a kind of lie. You can lie with images when you use it that way. And I understand when you say it can become scary if you use it that way. For me, I use it intensively, but for artistic purposes, and that's kind of big playground where you can try and do things. These are two worlds for me in the big AI world. There are different worlds. At the moment I'm in that world, but I see now and understand that when you really start using it to create a kind of different reality, it's another thing. So the way I use it at the moment, it's not scary at all. It's a big playground, but it can become scary when you use it to manipulate. That's just what I wanted to say.
Yes. There's a comment in the box. Can I refer to France?
Sure, I'm here. Sorry, I'm not putting my camera on. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what Koen just said, to differentiate, because right now, so I work at FairTrade International. We have as a plan for early next year to define some AI guidelines, because we get more and more offers from agencies, to generate visuals that are generated by AI. And we basically have no policy set, and we can see how this is required now. And of course, it has to match our values. And of course, beyond, I can see how this could be useful in certain cases for us. And that's the example I mentioned in the chat, where we have this policy where we do not want to feature children when we talk about child labor for dignity reasons. And of course, beyond the question on top of is it ethical to do this or not, is also actually, does it serve the purpose? Because, and this is also what Moritz said about credibility, in the end, if I am the audience and I see a post, for example, the post from Amnesty International, where they mention it's AI generated, I might just really disregard it and just think, it's actually not real. And then the message gets lost, and, the impact of images, and people don't read the rest. So I'm questioning myself if actually this is, even in the case of non-profit, helpful. And it's a bit scary also for me when I hear that somehow we will all have to use it at some point to compete. Yeah. So that was what I wanted to express here.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Natalie, your hand was up. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think because Maurice mentioned about the dark side and also like the crazy future that he's a bit afraid of. So I just want to also add on this is that, well, people like me working in a tech company, what we are seeing in the future is that because there's gonna be too many AI generated content, people would become like not trust anything on the internet. So they would only, or we would only becoming that we only trust content that's being proved, that can be really proved to be true, the one that we can trust. So I think that's the future that we are foreseeing. That's why I will mention that to prove the content provenance is not only important for AI generated content, but also human generated as well. Yeah, and I also wanna, I think, because what Franz just mentioned, I think it's also a question that I would like to have for Maurice, because I think like your role also plays a very vital one to help the business or the brand making the right decisions on communicating their products, their service out there to the end users, to the consumers, and how using the images or using the AI generated images. Because I was also asking myself if like when we see the images used on the news, because there's definitely they're being cropped, being added a little bit before it's being used on the media, on the news. And do we trust it or do we not? And I think it's a really good time where like AI create this like awareness that we need to question ourselves. I think that's a pretty good timing. So that's also the right time. I don't know if that's also a right timing for the brand to start questioning themselves how they put out the contents out there. So I mean, as a role in the agency side, what is how do you keep yourself like in doing the good job for that?
Yeah, one point in the discussions, we kind of in an atmosphere right now where I have the feeling that organizations and people don't want to make old faults again. So what I wanted to say, a lot of the discussions pointing out around AI is now we want to do it right, because we didn't discuss enough what the smartphone will do with our communities and our society. We didn't discuss enough what social media will do to political systems and our society. And now this AI thing is coming, and now we wanted to make it right. That's often the point where we get into discussions with organizations or our customers. And that's very cool. That's kind of this tipping point where I also fall back from the dark side to the bright side and thinking, yeah, let's do this, discuss it now, do it right now. But the topic is much bigger than social media these days or the smartphone these days, and it's very difficult at this point. But we need to have kind of, what happened here? That was Apple. I'm sorry. Apple is doing kind of reactions on kind of words, but the timing was not that bad. So, and I lost my word. Yeah, we are at this point. That's one thing we face right now, and that's very cool. And the second thing is on the other side, people are scared. Kind of the organization, like you said, Franz, we don't know at Fairtrade what we should do with proposals agencies are making with generated images. So we are all kind of the which was first, the black or the yellow or the white stripes on a zebra. So kind of who will move first, and that's more the discussions at this point we have with our customers. And yeah, I'm really, for me it's really cool to be at this point to nudge these discussions. But it's also not often that easy because we're faced with questions. I have to say, sorry, I don't know. I would try this, but if it's a success or if it was the right decision, I don't know. But the only thing I know is we have to try now, and we can't wait to try tomorrow. That's all.
Yeah, that's so true. Great comment. Amini?
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally enjoying this conversation. It's a fantastic conversation. As an artist, I think we are at a precipice, and the horizon of changes is going to happen. It is happening, but it will happen at a great pace. As Maurice was saying, we don't know what will happen 12 months to come. We really don't know. But I'm going to connect that with what Natalie is saying, the concept of distrusting the image. I'm actually agreeing and saying, don't trust it. Don't trust my photo. Don't. You have to verify it. You don't know me. You're assuming I'm a good person. Sure, he's an artist. There's ethics as an artist or a journalist, for example, a photojournalist, a documentarian. Good. But if that helps us get out of our seats and wish to actively verify the information, for me, that's a step forward. So saying, look, I've seen this image, whether prompted by AI or not, saying there is this case of child labor or abuse, whatever the case, in a particular country, right? I shouldn't be comfortable just to say, oh yeah, I agree with that. I trust the information just because it's from a said organization, right? However much I trust it, but to wish to verify that information for myself, right? Now, it's not easy for everybody, right? It's really not easy, but as we say, there's a lot of things going around. So for example, when organizations are seeking to fundraise, that's one of the topics that we discussed here at FairPicture, the question is, most of them will trust a body to give them information and reports through photos, images, and all that. And they will trust the information, right? Because of goodwill. But I think to take us at the extra step to verify, to actively verify this information will be a great step forward. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's going to be, something that will happen in the next day. But I think because most people are waking up right now, and as Maurice was saying, we really don't want to repeat the mistakes that were happening before, whereby the Africa that was presented was a poor Africa, and people coming in and say, oh, you're not working with lions in the street. I've had people say that to me on my face. They were like, this is not the image of Africa that we've been seeing for years. But that wasn't AI generated. It was photographs and films by creators. So that also, I think if the distrust is what comes out of this, I'm thumbs up. For me, it's a thumbs up. Yeah, thank you.
Moritz, over to you.
Sorry, I don't want to get too much speech time here, but just a little note and a little tip for everybody here. Please make a deep dive into the possibilities of open source intelligence. Google it, scroll through Reddit, scroll through Twitter or X, and get a point what is possible with open source intelligence to verify images. It is crazy, but we have to learn how to use it, and we have to use it. But what data and information is available online to verify an image, to verify a story, that starts with day and nighttime. That starts with clouds in the sky at this day, if you are capable of getting the information on which day the image was shoot. So, but just a little tip, if you're interested in this topic of verifying images, get around open source intelligence. It's sorry, I'm a little bit nerd. I love these Reddit rabbit holes, but it's very interesting, and it gives a lot of power back.
Thanks, Moritz. Tara?
Sorry, I missed the first part of the discussion, so apologies if I'm repeating something. But I think that part of what I'd agree with Amine that like this is on us to be more careful about the images that we use, and especially for the nonprofit space, since our when you're working with nonprofits or you're in a nonprofit, your authenticity is what people believe you, and if they don't, then they're not going to work with you, because that's really important. So I think it's also important to get out in front of this and give a have your AI policy listed front and center on what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, how you're going to use AI and how you're not going to use AI, and have it be a working document. So it's not like this is our final say, because everything is in flux, but this is where we are right now, and we want to be really honest about it. So if and when it comes back that someone's like, your images aren't genuine or blah blah blah, then you're showing them what you're doing, and you can go back to that. And there are ways now that people are developing to be able to authenticate images as well. Like from Adobe, there's the Content Authenticity Initiative that is really working with a lot of big companies at this point to try to help show where images come from and the authenticity. So it's behind the curve, not in front of it, but there's ways that you can really start thinking about this and like what you're doing with it. So that's a lot of what I recommend for our clients in terms of like also their ethical storytelling policy along with their AI, because those kind of go hand in hand at this point as well.
That's an excellent point. Somebody else like to
maybe I have a question to Natalie, because I think I'd really like to hear from you replying to both Moritz's input of open source intelligence as well as Tara's content authenticity initiative, which I think that you're also part of it. But maybe you can not only the solution of numbers, but also what you think in this realm, like digital solutions to these trust issues, where you think the industry might be heading. It would be really interesting.
Yeah, thank you for the questions as well. I think, I'm also happy to learn about open source intelligence as well. Thank you for sharing this information, because I'm also learning a lot about what kind of tech, what kind of solutions out there. Tara mentioned about C2PA, which numbers has been also be the partners. I would say the ecosystem members within that back in 2019. So what I personally observe is that we see more and more solutions and tools coming out to the market to help both brands and creators. What I personally feel is that because there are a lot of creations that I think the provenance can be generated at the point when it's created, no matter if it's open source tools or just design tools or any of that. Because I think Adobe has a lot of suites for creators, but also we see a lot of online solutions, service platforms that like Canva, they create contents easily. So how I see is that if there are more like tool type of platform or service, they can also jump into this to help the creators and both brands on like making a true images or making a true design. I think that's where we will move toward a more healthy or more trustworthy future. That's how I feel. And I think solution also depends on what kind of like contents they created or what kind of like the brands would choose to use. No matter it's just simply implement a watermark at least the people start to care if their content is being protected or not, if their content is being verified or not, or if I should put out authentic images or not. I think it's more about awareness. It's how the market is educating the consumers as well, but consumer is also learning and educating the market all together. And how the tech will move forward, what numbers we are also learning as well, because not only just in Europe, but also US, that there are so many AI regulations, AI Act ongoing. The regulation always comes a bit, well, it would happen only a bit late because it takes a lot of time, but at least the brands or the creators can start using some available tools to protect themselves at this start, because like Maurice says, in the next 12 months, it might be super crazy, because look at how AI impacts within just a few months in this year. So maybe that we're also gonna step into a future where we are not sure how it would become, let's say. Yeah.
Moritz?
I'm glad to hear you mentioned the AI Act. So, Aurel, the other point besides technical is governance to change something, and it's kind of the mood of the day. Joe Biden communicated a few hours ago that he will sign an executive order regarding AI, artificial intelligence systems and tools. So it looks like also the European Union with the AI Act are moving forward and kind of getting a little bit a faster pace than we are used to see in the past regarding technological issues and developments. So that's kind of cool. But back to the question of this evening, the authenticity. For example, the AI Act of the European Union is doing a very clever point of clustering technological solutions regarding the impact it could have on humans' life. So kind of medicine and so on, or facial recognition of refugees and so such topics. But the point is regarding the authenticity and the trustworthy of an image. This clustering won't work. First, because I don't know an image which could have an impact on social discussions or political discussions, which will be clustered into the point of, oh, that could have an impact on the life of a human. So that's kind of these in German you say es geht zwischen Stuhl und Bank. Es fällt zwischen die Stühle. It gets between two chairs. So I don't know if this word is used in English. But that's kind of the slang of this problem I'm thinking of we are having right now regarding the authenticity of an image. I don't know, Aurel.
Yeah, I think it probably also depends on what the photo is used for. I think before it was like, I think if there's like the photojournalistic part, for example, I think there might be a certain hope, because this has like to do with democracy. But I think even there, it's for some people it's already a political topic or a political question. So there's already no political agreement, I would say, or a broad agreement that you need to regulate it, or that there is a clear line of regulation if you look at some like political streams. And I think as soon as you go into the commercial part, and I think this, and this is also again something that's not new, I guess, but it's probably that's a bit my learning from tuning. It's just accelerating, or it's amplifying existing problems. But I mean, what we with Fair Picture, since like we work in this commercial part, because we say you also have an impact if you do commercial. And I think that's, for example, something in a political sense. It's often, well, it's advertising, so I don't care. Everyone knows it's advertising. But that images still have an impact even if it's advertising, because they might be framed in a way that is documentaries, that the style is used in a way it's documentary. You do storytelling. Everyone is doing storytelling because the story is closer to this documentary style, I guess, but also yeah, because you have you come closer to an emotional reaction. And I think in this regard, I think I'm a bit hesitant in waiting for regulation, because I think it's just then and also very often it's in the responsibility of the market. And I think there it's probably, I would rather say it is, and I agree with the bubble part here, but I think it's also, and I remember in our first discussion that we had, Moritz, it's about this, like, how can we take responsibility as a society, or as actors in a society that are sometimes gatekeepers, that are in positions where we can influence, where we can make decisions. I think I agree that it's really hard, but it's not a reason to just say, well, there's no way it's no reason why bother if it's not working anyway. I think we have to try, because the costs, I think, of it not getting it right are quite high, and I think it's worth then fighting for it. And I would say this is probably on multiple fronts. I completely agree. I think the technical part, like you answer, Natalie, but I think it doesn't address. So it will be very hard to address the question of, if someone has ill intent, then nice to have a technological solution, but it doesn't really solve the problem, or not until everyone it's rolled out completely. Yeah, so I think, to summarize this, I think it probably really depends also a bit on the niche, or on where it is used for, and also how, because I think also the audience reacts differently. So a non-profit audience might be more critical, because then a commercial audience might be less less easily manipulated, because they are used to ads kind of communication anyway. And I think in the media part, I think the danger is the greatest, but on the same time, I think the awareness is already very high in the journalistic part, because with fake news and so on, this has been a topic.
That's great. We've got a few more minutes before we wrap up. Would somebody else like to ask a question or make a comment? Joyce Marie.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. So I have a few thoughts, maybe that I've had for a while. And it's when I've worked with NGOs, especially with minors or young people, and, you know, taking their pictures and knowing that I'm taking them well. But I always ask myself, like, if I was in this situation and someone was taking a picture of me, and then 20 years, I look back at that image and think, oh, maybe I didn't want to be in that picture. How does that feel? And so in the case of AI, you know, there's the idea of maybe taking a picture of a student, or, you know, a minor whose story needs to be told, and representing them in a way that feels kind of authentic. But at the same time, you know, there's a question about, are they being included in the process? And how would they feel about that representation of something that's been generated about them? How would they feel about that? And so it's more of like a thought process I think I've been having for a while. And so sometimes I think about, like, it would be cool, especially with, say, a young person, to like collaborate with them and write a story or a book that doesn't include them, but highlights their story. Kind of like with films, the way, like, there'll be like a film, a really nice film, and then at the end it says, oh, this film is based on a true story. And I think that kind of, to this question of looking at AI images and then kind of disregarding them because they're not real. And so it kind of feels like, oh, no need to trust that information. What would having the backstory of the person who this, image represents, how would that maybe create that human connection? And so, yeah, that's sort of like the idea I have at the moment of being able to represent this person, but through AI and also working with them. Maybe it's a longer process, but at the end of the day, there is that inclusion of them not feeling like they're left out. Yeah, so those are just some thoughts, but at the same time, it poses a lot of those questions like, okay, yes, maybe they're involved, but then what happens? Do you sell that story? Do you just put it out in the organization's website? Does it have more meaning, or it just kind of creates this idea that, oh, since, maybe getting consent, especially from a young person, isn't, it's not 100% guaranteed. Should they later on come and think, oh, I didn't actually want my story to be told, I just thought because I was receiving some sort of benefit, I needed to, do it. So it does kind of create that opportunity, but it still has a lot of questions around it. So it's just the thought I've been having that I think, yeah, I wanted to share.
Thanks so much, Marie. I think we've been feeling and thinking about similar issues ourselves. Natalie, would you like to go last? And then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I think because the reason why I raised my hand, because I noticed in the chat is that Sebastian mentioned about the Leica camera, because that's exactly what I shared with Ariel yesterday about this news. It's really inspiring, and I'm really glad to see that the camera hardware company put in these efforts into integrate that, and it's an important tool for a lot of photographers in this room right now. So I would just want to also share is that if you are thinking of authenticate your content, I would like to also invite you to try out capture the solution that we develop for creators. In these tools that you can generate the provenance for your data, for your content, but also if you already implement C2PA, which you can also download the C2PA metadata as well when you bring your content to our network. And well, to summarize that, like for such a great conversation tonight, and to hear about the people who work in the agency side. I mean, as a photographer, that how he see different tools such as camera, AIs in this. I think it really. I just once again really glad that I work in this field that can help both the creators and the business in helping them bring more trustworthiness through their contents to the people who view that. And because we are all part of it, we are the creators at the same time, we are also the viewer as well. And I hope that this impacts not only happens in the creativity industry, but also to the others such as news media, because I really want to live in a society where I see the things that I can just believe it. Yeah, I think I hope that like seeing is believing can be really true. So well, again as well. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Natalie. And thank you everybody for being here this evening or tonight, this morning, wherever you're coming from in the world. We really appreciate the opportunity for all of us to get together and share ideas and learn collectively together. And it's something that we're really passionate about at Fair Picture, which is why we have these Fair Talks every 6 weeks. So if you'd like to continue this conversation, please follow us on LinkedIn and join the group Ethical Communication and Storytelling. We've just set up this place, it's not a fair picture space. It's just a neutral place for all of us to come together and be a place to share ideas and ask questions and hopefully generate more of a discourse around, you know, many different issues to do with ethical communication, including AI. And, you know, hopefully we can engage with other like-minded practitioners there. That's it, I think, for today. We don't have a date yet, but we're looking forward to having you all at our next FairTalk. It'll be sometime in January after the new year, but we'll let you know about that through our regular channels, mostly LinkedIn and email. And once again, thank you everybody for taking the time. Our panelists, thank you for joining us and sharing, and everybody else for contributing in the conversation. Have a lovely day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Thank you.
invitation and the questions.